At the same time, we've got Washington saying that the sites that they hit were completely obliterated. What's your take on this?
Obviously, the structures on the surface have been destroyed or badly damaged, but that's not where the key assets are. The key assets are deep down underground. And from what we're hearing in Washington, it doesn't seem like Trump is going to be very happy. But what is more important is that the Iranians know how to build centrifuges. They have the infrastructure in the country, the industrial infrastructure to build everything for the nuclear program. They have the scientists, they have thousands of scientists, and Iran is no longer going to allow the International Atomic Energy Agency into the country because it refused to condemn the attacks on the nuclear installations, which could have hypothetically led to radioactive contamination, killing many people. So why should Iran allow them back in, especially since it is clear that they have been passing on intelligence for years to Western intelligence agencies, and that has led to the murder of Iranian scientists. But I think when we put all of this together, this was a major mistake by the United States because they have now been blinded in Iran. They no longer can use the International Atomic Energy Agency to spy on the Iranian people and to carry out strikes. But I think the most important thing that comes out of this is that the United States is untrustworthy. You cannot negotiate with it. It's become clear that as the Americans were pretending to negotiate with Iran, they were being deceitful, they were being dishonest, they were plotting against the Iranian people quietly with the genocidal regime in Tel Aviv, and they carried out a sudden attack. We recall how Trump was saying the night, hours before the attack, that he was against an aggression, but then hours afterwards, he was basically taking credit for all of it.
Yeah, it's quite interesting you say that. We were watching that statement by President Trump where he was saying we've got 2 weeks to make our decision, and then, yes, hours later, this attempted obliterating. And I think when we saw the Pentagon security brief, what's quite interesting about the weapons that were used is they showed that when they tested them, they only penetrated a couple of meters into the ground. And you were saying the facilities where the real reactors are, the real equipment is far, far deeper than that.
Yes, they are very, very deep. And the Iranian engineers who built it have shown a great deal of ingenuity. Of course, the Iranians don't want to come out and say anything. They don't want to give information to the Americans or to anyone about the situation in the facilities. But the facilities, in any case, are not accessible to the United States. Trump can pretend that he knows what happened down there, or the Israeli regime can pretend to know what goes on down there, and they can pretend that they sent in commandos or people. That's all for show, and that's all for propaganda. But in reality, they have no idea, and the area is secure, and the Iranians are, from now on, they're going to treat the International Atomic Energy Agency as an adversary. It's not a friend of the Iranian people. It was used as a tool by the Americans, as all other institutions that were created post-Second World War, international institutions. All of them are used by the West. They're controlled by the West. The OPCW, which was for chemical weapons, was used by the West to frame Syria so that they could bomb Syria. And the International Atomic Energy Agency, the UN, all of these bodies are controlled by the West. But what the West is now doing is it's destroying the credibility of the very same bodies they created to preserve their own hegemony. And the decline of the empire has made them increasingly irrational, and they're destroying the tools that belong to them.
The Pentagon also talked about how this had been a 15-year-long project to build something that they thought could hit Iran's nuclear facilities and really make an impact. First of all, does that surprise you that this was essentially 15 years in the making? And do you think that prep was enough given what we've seen of the damage so far?
No, I'm not surprised at all. There's no real difference between the likes of Obama and the likes of Trump and the likes of Biden and others. They're all more or less the same. Trump is more crude and he's more open and he says the quiet part out loud, which does serve a purpose for the rest of the world. But the previous presidents of the United States, they were people who carried out all forms of war and aggression. Obama helped the Saudis carry out the genocide in Yemen. He destroyed Libya. There's nothing different about previous presidents that would make one surprised that this was being planned so long ago.
We heard also from the foreign minister that the prospect of talks now between the US and Iran are completely unclear. You've talked about the fact that the US has shown that it's completely untrustworthy. You say that the International Atomic Agency will be banned from coming into the country. Given everything that's happened, is it ever possible to get these two sides back to the table?
Iran never left the table. Iran was at the table when the United States was being deceitful and plotting against Iran. So it's clear that it wasn't the Americans or Trump who was serious. And that changes everything. Even if at some point we do have indirect negotiations again with Americans, and that's unclear if and when it will happen. But if it does, it's going to be a different situation. Ordinary Iranians are now very hostile to the regime in Washington because the regime in Washington helped this apartheid regime that is carrying out a genocide as we speak in Gaza and is bombing Lebanon today as well. They helped them attack Iran. They helped them murder children. They helped them murder women and innocent people and destroy Iranian civilian infrastructure. So the United States has waged war against the Iranian people. And even those who traditionally would consider themselves to be liberal or Western-oriented, especially among the youth, there's been a sea change in their worldview. The country is very united today, more united than I've ever seen since the 1980s when Saddam Hussein invaded Iran at the behest of the West. So the country today is very skeptical of the United States. No one trusts the United States. And the Iranians are speaking about building bridges with the global South, with in the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. So this has created a sea change in Iranian public opinion. And that, I think, is even more important than the aggression and the murder and the slaughter that the Americans have carried out against the Iranian people with the Israeli regime. They've changed the mood in Tehran in a way which is going to have long-term consequences for the United States.
Yeah, I think that's very interesting, that sea change. Obviously, the US calling for regime change, and now you're saying the country is even more solidly united. Thank you very much for talking us through those points. That's Tehran University Professor Saeed Mohammed Morandi. Much appreciated.
Thank you.